Welcome to Bear in Mind. I'm your host, Chancellor Bob Berdahl. We're coming to you from our television studio at the University of California, Berkeley, where we're joined by a small audience of students, faculty, and staff. Bear in Mind, which also appears on the UC Berkeley website, is a monthly conversation with some of the most interesting and informed people here on the Berkeley campus. On this edition, we'll be talking to Michele de Coteau about the Charles Tunstall Multicultural Engineering Program, doctoral candidate Victor Peskin on war tribunals, and Sundance Film Festival winner Shilpi Gupta on her film When the Storm Came. So stay tuned for this edition of Bear in Mind. Our first guest, Michele de Coteau, is the director of the Charles Tunstall Multicultural Engineering Program here on campus. Also known as MEP, the program's goal is to increase the number of underrepresented students who enroll and graduate from engineering here at Berkeley. Welcome to Bear in Mind, Michele.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, tell me about the history of this program. When did it start? Who was Charles Tunstall? And how did you first get involved in the program?
Okay, well, MEP started in 1981, and Charles Tunstall was the director of the program when I enrolled here as a freshman at Berkeley. Charles is one of these people that every student, he made them feel welcome. And I first met him, I thought he was a little strange because he was so excited that I was here. He was like, "You're here, you're studying material science, that's great," because he had a background in metallurgy himself. And so he would welcome every student, he and Ronnie Keaton, who's still with me today at the program. And basically, we renamed the program after him in the early 90s. The program was renamed after Charles because he went missing, actually, during my senior year.
Well, now, what area in engineering did you study?
I studied material science and engineering.
Were there very many underrepresented minority students in the program when you started?
I believe in my entering class there were maybe 35 of us.
All right.
Underrepresented engineers.
And roughly how many today?
The numbers are about the same today at the moment. They were higher in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. We had as many as 60, 65 in an entering class, but our numbers are pretty static, around 30 right now.
All right. Now, tell me, how did you decide to major in engineering? What led you to that decision?
Oh, well, I was a member of certain high school outreach programs. The professional development program here on campus had a summer program that brought students to Berkeley to work really hard in math and science and English, and that was part of it. And then I also went to a program called Preface at the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. They had a program that I saw advertised in the counseling office when I was a sophomore, and it said, women, minorities, do you like math and science? Free trip to New York. And the 15-year-old mind saw free trip to New York. And I was an honors math student.
But you must have liked math and science.
I did like math and science a great deal. I didn't realize I was going to upstate New York.
Oh, you thought you were going to be in New York City?
New York City, yeah.
All right.
But I ended up at RPI, and it was an intense 2-week program for women and minorities, residential program, and we learned about all the different engineering majors. Every day we'd have a different engineering discipline, and there were material scientists running the program. And so that was the coolest day. That was the best day of experiments and demonstrations and speakers. And so and when I heard about material science, I thought, oh, that makes sense, because I knew I liked math and science, but I didn't know any scientists, and I was used to watching Saturday morning movies where black and white movies where the scientist is this guy with the curly hair and the things bubbling in the lab. Right. So I thought you could be a chemist or a physicist or a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher, those sort of things. I'd never heard of engineering before then. So when I heard about that, I thought, oh, this makes sense. This sounds ideal to study, something practical, get science and math together. So a little light bulb went off, and I came home and applied to material science programs.
And why did you choose Berkeley? You must have been somebody sought after by many engineering schools.
Well, one of the reasons I chose Berkeley had to do with the fact that I'd spent 2 summers here with the professional development program. So I had sort of a sense of ownership of the campus. Berkeley offered me a Regents and Chancellor scholarship. And also it made financial sense. I was a very pragmatic child, and I thought I can come to Berkeley and not have any school loans after I finished my undergraduate degree. I did the math and figured out what it would cost me to go other places. So Berkeley seemed like the best bargain, best of all worlds.
Well, now in 1988, when you graduated, you were the first student in, I think, 25 years or so, and the first woman from Berkeley to win a Rhodes Scholarship. That's the Cadillac of scholarships. Tell me about your decision to apply for that, and then what it was like to be a student, a Rhodes student at Oxford.
Well, it was not my decision to apply for it.
It wasn't?
No. I had no idea. I thought Rhodes scholarships were for people like Bill Bradley and political science majors and the Bill Clintons, those type of people, not for African American engineering students. And there was a group of black faculty and staff at the time: Dean Bogan, Professor Harry Morrison, Professor Roy Thomas, Bob Fulov, who was the director of PDP. They felt that the campus was not informing minority students about these Cadillac scholarships, the Rhodes, the Marshall, and so forth. So they invited a number of students that they thought were qualified to breakfast, and they told us about these scholarships and that we were qualified and that we should think about applying. And I went for the free breakfast and went home and called my mom up and said, Mommy, these people think I should apply for a Rhodes Scholarship. Isn't that funny? And she said, that's not funny at all. That's not funny. You do exactly what those people say you do.
Okay.
So
she understood how important this could be.
And she understood that I'd had good advice from these people before. One of the things at Berkeley, one of the reasons I work here now and recruit students now and work with students now is that I know there's people who will give students good advice here. There's people who really do care and go the extra mile. And this group of black faculty and staff really mentored me through the process. They helped me with my application when the Berkeley Campus Committee wouldn't interview me because I was a little bit on the late end. They put together a mock interview for me. And they really made it possible for me to get the scholarship and to even, they dreamed of things for me that I hadn't dreamed of at all.
Well, that's really fantastic. There are only 32 Rhodes Scholars annually appointed, so it's a very, very selective group. And then you went off to Oxford.
Right.
And what was it like to be a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford? Was that really intimidating? Were you very excited? Tell us about just your feelings when you landed in England and found yourself in this very, very special environment.
Well, I grew up in the Bay Area and went to Berkeley, so my first thought was, it's very cold here. And it was exciting. And I think one of the things that's most valuable is to go and be the overseas student for a change, to go and be a foreigner somewhere. Growing up here in America as an African American, you don't feel like you're American all the time. You feel less than mainstream all-American sort of thing. And you go over there and you get a real sense of the fact that, oh yeah, I'm an American. And people comment on your Americanness. And you realize that your perspective, you develop an appreciation for having grown up in this country in a lot of ways. It was a fabulous experience because I went over there to study. I did a PhD in materials science there. And I went to the department at Oxford where I got to work with some of the people who'd written the textbooks on diffraction contrast and got to sit on the electron microscope with some of these people whose textbooks I'd read while I was at Berkeley. One of the reasons that I decided Oxford was a match for me was because I was very interested in electron microscopy, and we have quite a few of those people up on the hill here at Berkeley at LBL. And we have British professors from Oxford and Cambridge in the materials science department here, and we had guest speakers that were doing research come down. So I knew there was good work being done there. So, it was a wonderful time to be in the department. I worked with a really international lab group. I got to go to East Germany while it was still East Germany to present work at a conference. And I got to go back 2 years later when the wall was down. So culturally it was a great experience, and I made some friends that I'll be friends with for the rest of my life. So it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and And I got to get my PhD too.
Well, now, what kinds of things do you do with the students in the MEP program?
You know, as you know, I'm sure you'd agree with me, Chancellor, that engineering is the best major on campus, right?
Well, it's the toughest.
Yes. But it's very exciting, and it gives students a huge amount of opportunities in terms of careers and where they can go. But like you said, it's the toughest, and it requires a great deal of commitment and time and really stick-to-itiveness from our students. And nationally, we know that students leave engineering in the first 2 years of study. So what we try to do at MEP is really create an academic community for the students so that they have a feeling that they belong, that they're part of something, that they're part of the community of the College of Engineering. So we work with them from the time that they're first thinking about applying to Berkeley right through the time that they leave us.
So it really works back into the high schools as well.
We will talk to students who are confused about which engineering major to apply to.
Okay.
Let them talk to that. We work with them when they're trying to make the decision, when they've been admitted, if they want to come and be a bear or be a beaver or be a tree or where they want to go to school.
Right.
We'll host them on campus, introduce them to current students. We work with them during the CalSO summer orientation, help them plan their schedule. We have a 2-week pre-engineering program, the summer pre-engineering program, right before they start. And the students call it academic boot camp because we kind of whip them into shape to face the rigors of the semester. During the school year, we have an academic study center. We have tutoring. We do advising, help students plan their coursework. We also help pair them with undergraduate research opportunities, whether it's here on this campus or elsewhere. And the other thing that we do that's really important, and I'd be remiss not to mention, is that we partner with industry. Our program would not be able to do most of what it does if we didn't have generous industry support.
You're doing something very, very important, and we're extraordinarily grateful to the reinvestment in Berkeley that you've made with your own career and the kind of inspiration that you represent to students. So thank you very much for being on Bear in Mind, Michele.
Oh, thank you very much.
That was Michele de Coteau, who is the director of the Charles Tunstall Multicultural Engineering Program here at Berkeley. In December, when Saddam Hussein was captured, the first question asked was, how will he be tried? Our next guest, Victor Peskin, has done extensive research on war crime tribunals. A doctoral candidate in the Department of Political Science here at Berkeley, Victor is writing his dissertation on the ad hoc tribunals for Rwanda and the former Yugoslavia. Although these are different from the domestic tribunal Saddam Hussein may be facing, and they are international, run by the United Nations, Victor will have some interesting insights into war crimes tribunals in general, and perhaps some of these in particular that he's writing his dissertation about. Welcome to Bear in Mind, Victor.
Thank you for having me.
Were the tribunals in Nuremberg after the Second World War the first such tribunals? Did the League of Nations organize any
No, they did
war
not.
crimes tribunals?
No, they did not. Nuremberg and Tokyo were the first international tribunals.
They were the first international tribunals.
Exactly.
Are war crimes tribunals simply the vengeance of victors?
Okay, Nuremberg and Tokyo were victors' courts, except for today's tribunals a mean to overcome victors' justice. And I think it's an important concept and principle. All suspects from all sides of a civil war, for instance, should be held accountable.
So the accountability then is really something that is created by the UN.
Yes.
And they are the ones who decide really what constitutes a war crime.
Exactly.
Are these now today all basically civil war tribunals? That is, these two that you're studying in the Balkans and in Rwanda grow out of a civil war circumstance. Do you see an opportunity where some international conflict will lead to those?
In terms of interstate conflict?
Interstate conflict.
It's entirely possible. So the
but will those always be the victor's justice?
Well, it depends. It depends. The Permanent International Criminal Court, which is newly created, intends to prosecute suspects from all sides of a conflict.
Okay.
But it's still unclear who will be prosecuted. Will the United States actually be subject to prosecution? It hasn't.
Well, we've refused to join it.
Exactly. So this idea that these courts intend to overcome Victor's justice, but to have enough political power to do so, to bring suspects into the dock, is still up in the air.
Okay. Why did the United States refuse to join?
The stated reason is pretty much that the U.S. Does not want to be subject to an international court. That if we have
what do we have to fear?
Well, I personally don't think we have too much to fear. Under the provisions of this court, a country has the first opportunity to try its own war crime suspects, and then if a country is unable to do so, that a court will then intervene to try this case. So I think that a sovereignty is not threatened too much by the International Criminal Court.
Can you trust countries to prosecute their own war criminals, and
Right.
and that may be less possible?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. I think having an international criminal court which stands outside of these countries, supervising these countries,
Right.
so to speak, is an important type of innovation in international law. I think if you leave it to countries, some might prosecute their own, but countries need a pressure to do so.
Do you think Saddam Hussein will get a fair trial?
Well, I think I'm very skeptical of that. I think that because that so many of us pretty much think he's already guilty.
That's right.
He's a notorious figure.
He's been pronounced guilty by everybody in the American administration, for example.
Exactly. So the question is, I think he's an evil person.
Yeah.
So can he be acquitted? And can a court anywhere acquit somebody like that? I think in order to be fair, a court has to be able to acquit.
Is there a future for war crimes tribunals?
In terms of preventing future conflict,
in terms of
being a
preventing,
deterrent.
Obviously, one of the reasons for putting people on trial is as a deterrence.
Right.
And are they going to function that way, or are they always going to be seen as sort of victor's justice in some sense?
Right. I think the idea of these courts is to deter, one of their aims. And we've only had these courts, the contemporary courts, for 10 years, so it's too early to say. In a way, they have not deterred further conflict in the former Yugoslavia. The court was set up in 1993. The Kosovo conflict happened in 1999. It did not deter, but that does not mean it can't deter future crimes out. Right. And so I think that it might take 30 or 40 or 50 years to really build up a deterrent effect. But we cannot rely on courts alone to do that. So I'm hopeful, though, except for it's important also to say that in some circumstances, I think a court can exacerbate conflict in terms of...
How is that?
Well, in Serbia, for instance, today, the whole kind of issue of cooperating with the court in The Hague, handing over suspects, is extremely divisive and destabilizing. And so in terms of internal stability for Serbia, the cooperation issue is highly problematic. And so tribunals can often complicate the situation domestically for some countries. So we have to keep that in mind too. It's not a cure-all at the same time, right?
That could be the case in Iraq as well.
That could be the case as well. That could be.
Very interesting subject. I think your dissertation is going to produce a very, very fascinating book, and we all look forward to seeing it.
Great, thank you.
That was Victor Peskin, a graduate student in political science, talking about war crimes tribunals. Thank you, Victor, for being on Bear in Mind.
Thank you.
Shilpi Gupta is a graduate student majoring in journalism and international studies. Recently, she won the jury prize in short filmmaking at this year's Sundance Film Festival. Her entry was a documentary called When the Storm Came. The festival's catalog described the film as, quote, an unforgettable documentary about the impact that the devastating global weapon of war continues to have on a Kashmir community. Shilpi, welcome to Bear in Mind.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now tell us, first of all, how did you get interested in filmmaking? Berkeley is not usually the place where filmmakers come to school. They go to Southern California or UCLA where the industry is located. But you're a journalist, and you wanted to be a film journalist initially, and that's what got you involved in it? Or tell us about your variety of interest in international studies and journalism that got you to where you are.
Well, that's a tough one. That's a complicated one. It was kind of a long process. I started in journalism when I was living in Beijing, actually, and I've always been obsessed with photography. And then they kind of just started combining to lead my interest to documentary filmmaking.
Tell us about the film. What's the story of the film? What is it about?
The story is it's a short film about it's basically profiling a village in Kashmir that was allegedly the site of a mass rape in 1991, and how the stigma continues to haunt it even a decade later. And so it takes a look at the rape, the incident. It takes a look at the history of Kashmir and in context with the history of India and Pakistan.
This was in the midst of a conflict in Kashmir between Pakistan and India.
Well, the conflict hasn't really subsided in 50 years.
Yeah.
So.
But it was a rape that really assaulted an entire village of women.
Yeah, the story right now, I mean, the numbers are under contention, but they range from, the Indian government will say 0 to, exaggerated reports will say 100. So, the kind of well-accepted number falls somewhere around 36 or so. But yeah, so it's almost the entire village that was over a certain age.
And you say that the stigma perpetuated even today?
Yeah.
Okay.
The stigma, the film really kind of focuses more on the stigma because the rape is just alleged and the government denies it. I go into whether or not it happened, and I question journalists about whether or not it happened, as well as other experts. But it really focuses on the stigma, and it really focuses on what happens to a community once they have this reputation, and how does it continue to haunt them. The point really kind of was, rape is often internationally when we talk about rape and conflict, it tends to be Bosnia or Rwanda and these widespread systematic rapes that are state-sponsored. But what happens to these smaller incidences that are often just swept under the carpet as the spoils of war, or boys will be boys and more. And, such an incident continues to affect these people for decades. And so that's kind of really the focus of the film.
Okay. What led you to make this film? I mean, did you know about this incident and decide to do a film about it, or were you looking for some topic? And
I was on a Human Rights Center, the Berkeley Human Rights Center. I was on a fellowship the summer beforehand. My proposal was to document the plight of women and children in conflict, specifically Kashmir. My family's from Kashmir, so that's what led me to Kashmir. They're actually from Jammu, which is the more Hindu region of Kashmir. And so while I was there, this is one of the stories that everybody knows about. Everybody knows about this village as the raped village. And so when I found out about it, I did a little bit of research on it, went to the internet cafes, and so I found out that this woman had opened this school out there, and so I contacted her, and I got her to take me out there, and I spent a day there with the villagers. And then when I came back and I was proposing my documentary, because this is my thesis, so I was proposing my documentary topic, this was at the forefront for me, and my professor jumped on it. And so then I went back in November again for 2 weeks, and just,
Was it difficult to get people to talk about it, or how did you gain their confidence? Because obviously this was broadcasting, as it were, an incident that was extraordinarily painful and had long-lasting consequences for them. So how did you persuade them that you could be trusted to do this?
Well, when I first went out there, they were very, they're like, why should we share our story with you? What are you going to do for me? But let me tell you this, and let me tell you what happened. So they wanted to share their stories, but at the same time, I don't think I would have gotten as intimate a story. I think it would have been more angry, it would have been more removed, less really tapping into their emotional perspectives. But when I went the second time and I actually stayed there, I lived there for 5 days with the villagers. I was living in their homes, sleeping in the floors with them, in the room, you know, interacting with them daily, eating dinner with them, going to the forest to collect wood, which was really hard. And so I just spent so much time with them, and I really developed a pretty strong relationship with them before I started actually interviewing. I actually interviewed the last 2 days I was there. So I think by that point they had really formed kind of a bond with me, and like saw that I wasn't just coming, getting their story, exploiting them, and leaving. And so I think that's how I really built the trust with them.
Okay. Well, now, you entered this in the Sundance Film Festival.
Yeah.
And you won the jury prize.
Yeah.
Did you go to Sundance
Yes.
with this? What was that like?
It was incredible. It was really an amazing time. To be honest, it was a big party, but it was a lot of fun. So I was actually just really, I mean, since I had finished the film, all I've been saying is I just want to go to Sundance. I know it's not going to happen, but I just want to get into Sundance. So I was just ecstatic by getting into Sundance, and I was really shocked about the award.
You submit the film, and then you are declared a finalist, and you can go to Sundance. And then the prize is awarded there. You don't know when you go that you're going to win the prize.
You don't know when you go to the award ceremony that you're going to win the prize.
Okay. Good luck to you. I think this
you.
is a fascinating story and clearly a wonderful start to what I think will be a brilliant career.
Thank you.
We're really glad to have you on Bear in Mind. Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
That was Shilpi Gupta, who is a film producer and a graduate student in journalism and international studies here at Berkeley, talking about her film, When the Storm Came, the winner of the jury award at the Sundance Film Festival. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.